coming or this actual Thursday. Hope the upcoming one's good too. It's going good over here. A little windy today, but everything is going pretty darn good. As you can see, we're going to be going over some stuff with Streamlabs again, which means we can pull up some great graphics for you, which is pretty cool. And that can kind of further the narrative in terms of what we're trying to explain to you. And we've got some really interesting stories today. I actually went through a story and I started laughing my ass off when I read it. And what it really showed was that how independent mortgage bankers and mortgage brokers are actually outperforming depository banks, the big banks. That in and of itself is not terribly interesting, but what is interesting about it is the fact that the banks, and I'm going to explain this in a few moments, the depositories, the big box depository banks, actually have regulatory oversight that demands that they do certain things under fear of punitive punishment. Your independent mortgage bankers, credit unions, and mortgage brokers don't have the same type of oversight as the banks do. And what I found is they're just simply outperforming them. And it just cracked me up to no end. So that's going to be a great story for us. We've got a couple other stories that I think are pretty interesting. But to get a couple of things out of the way here is just real quickly, the reason why we can go ahead and scour and search out all the most interesting stories and pertinent and relevant stories for you and your business is because we're afforded to do so by companies who support us. And we only work with, after doing this for the better part of 20 years, we only work with companies who share the same values we have. And of course, like I said, my friends over at Oaktree are fantastic. They have their bank statement loans that go up to 90%, cash out refinances. They have a rate match guarantee. They will either meet or beat any rate of any company offering the similar product as this. And then, of course, they have their DSCR loan. Their DSCR loan is really cool, guys. It basically, what they do with the DSCR loan is they qualify the property more than the individual. In short, on your DSCR loan, if the rents on your DSCR are 75% of what your mortgage payment is, think about this. If your rents are 75% of what your mortgage payment is, you're going to qualify for the property. You come up with your down payment and you're good to go. And it's on a 40-year loan if you choose to. I think the 40-year loan is fantastic. I don't know why anyone wouldn't do it. Here's the reason why. The first 10 years are interest only. Oh my God, those are subprime loans. Bull. No, these are great loans. It's interest only. You actually qualify on the interest only amount. Okay? And it's interest only for 10 years. And after that 10-year period, it just readjusts into a straight 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Think about it. If you had a 30-year fixed rate mortgage for the first 10 years that are interest only, when you adjust after those 10 years, you're into a 20-year loan with a much higher payment, and that's how people default. So fantastic loans. Make sure you check out the DSCR loan over there with our friends over at Oaktree. They're fantastic to work with. They will also, by the way, as I told you, they'll help you actually find clients who are going to fit the program. They will help you market it, and of course, they've got marketing pieces for you. It's a great program. And oh, by the way, it goes up to 8 units. I mean, this is like 8 units. So every time, if you have an 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 unit property, what we've learned is that they all pencil. I mean, you get 3 people who are giving you $1,500 a month. You're bringing in $4,500 in rent. Your mortgage payment is $3,500. It's a done deal. All you have to do is come up with 15% down, and you get really, really competitive rates. Check out the DSCR program, guys. They've been doing it longer than anyone. It's totally killer. Finally, sharing is caring. If you share this, it helps me bring great content to you. And Facebook has changed their algorithm as of lately. We were killing it, and of course, some of our numbers are down right now. They're not giving us, they want us to pay them a bunch of money. So when you share, it helps us. And then keep these conversations going because they're great conversations. Especially today, if you're a mortgage broker or an independent mortgage banker, I've got just a great little graph, a fun story for you. By the way, I did notice on my, you're probably watching this on NREP Daily, the National Real Estate Post Facebook page, or on YouTube right now. But what I find interesting is I put this really great graph up there in terms of how much equity has been gained over the past 24 months, and this is according to the FHFA, and it goes state by state, so you can go ahead and find out where you lie in this whole thing. And I got very little engagement. I got virtually no engagement on it. And then I also posted a picture of Willie Nelson Snoop Dogg, and Cheech and Chong with a caption reading, "This is how high your gas prices are." And I got 10 shares on that and a whole bunch of views. So evidently, you guys find Cheech and Chong, Snoop, and Willie Nelson much more interesting than you find mortgage statistics. So I appreciate you guys being on board with us today. All right, with that said, let's jump into this. Okay, so do you remember, I could be dating myself here, but do you remember when Ronald Reagan once said, "What are the scariest words in the English language?" Do you guys remember this? Well, he said the scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." That one's always kind of rung true for me. And if there's something that I really rail about on this show with any regularity, if you've watched it over the past 15 years, and if you have, thank you, by the way. But one thing that I'm constantly railing on is the unintended consequences of government regulation as it pertains to the mortgage and real estate market. Having done this, again, looking at this every day for the past 15 years, it is quite remarkable to see how often and consistently the federal government will get this stuff wrong. I mean, just completely wrong. It's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Whenever the government gets involved with something, it seems that it kind of goes to crap. Now, this could sound like I'm bringing a certain bias to the table, and perhaps I am. In fact, I'm sure I am. But I'm not the only person out there to have this bias. So before I get to our story as to how the government's consistently and persistently getting things wrong, all we have to do to prove that I'm not necessarily bringing an inherent bias to the table is just walk down memory lane in the mortgage space just a few short years ago when we had this beautiful piece of regulation that was passed called Dodd-Frank. By the way, did you know Christopher Dodd, prior to writing the Dodd-Frank bill, did you know that Christopher Dodd actually got an illegal loan from Countrywide, from Angelo Mozillo, from a little program called Friends of Angelo? Yeah, where you've got illegal loans with illegal rates and illegal guidelines, and of course they were illegally beneficial to the people who were friends of Angelo. By the way, the president of the GSEs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, both got those, along with a list of other top-flight legislators that are in the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee. They all got illegal loans, and then they got together and wrote the Dodd-Frank bill. You might say the books were cooked early on this one. But so what is the Dodd-Frank Act? Well, I think we all know what the Dodd-Frank Act is, don't we? The Dodd-Frank Act was passed after the mortgage meltdown, and they had a certain number of objectives that were congressionally mandated to fix the mortgage and real estate market so we never see a meltdown like we saw in years past. So what were those mandates? Well, they're pretty simple, guys. It was to promote financial stability, to improve accountability and transparency in the United States financial system, to end the perception of some financial institutes being too big to fail, and to protect the American consumer from abusive practices by financial service providers. Okay, so let's just take this one step at a time. To promote financial stability, how well did that work out for Jane and Joe I live paycheck to paycheck buyers? In fact, financial stability is something that we are further away from now than we were prior to the meltdown in 2008. If we look at the second one, to improve accountability and transparency in the financial systems. Guys, when you look at this one, all you have to do is look at what the fintech companies are doing right now. The fintech companies, through the Office of Innovation with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right now, it is stated, it is the law of the land, that fintech companies can go ahead and try things with financial technology and products on you, unbeknownst to you, and do not need to tell you, and only need to tell you if they feel that it's going to be in the best interest of technology. In short, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has turned people who are borrowing other people's money into lab rats. That's right. So when it comes down to improve accountability and transparency, that's hardly transparent when I think about it. The third one is the perception of ending too big to fail. This one's an absolute laugher. With all the regulation that was passed subsequent to Dodd-Frank, a lot of the smaller financial institutions could not afford the cost of getting up to speed, so they were absorbed by larger banks, thus making the big banks even bigger. So not only did we get rid of banks that were big, we actually made all of those banks bigger. And in fact, with Dodd-Frank, we also passed a piece of legislation that said any institution that is systemically important to our financial welfare will be bailed out in the event that that has to happen. In short, we took too big to fail, and we made it the law of the land, and we now have banks bigger than they have ever been. So when it comes to Dodd-Frank, they actually accomplished the exact opposite of what they said they were trying to do. And of course, to protect American consumers from abusive practices by financial services providers, do we need to really talk about that? All we need to do is look at the sandbox laws that were initially passed in Arizona, then were adopted by the Department of Justice and supported by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The laws, again, going back to the fintech companies right now, that are allowed to run fast and loose with regulations that guide other lenders out there. Again, turning consumers, people who borrow other people's money, into nothing short of lab rats. So when we look at Dodd-Frank just 12 or 13 short years ago, and find out what the government has done, yes, you can see why we say I'm from the government, I'm here to help, are the scariest words in the English language. Now, so why do I bring this up? Okay, I bring this up, and this is laughable, guys. This is so fun and so funny. I bring this up because of the the Community Reinvestment Act, also known as the CRA. This one's great. The Community Reinvestment Act. Guys, the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, was passed in 1977 to fight explicitly racist redlining policies and requires federal bank regulators, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the Federal Reserve, and the FDIC to evaluate the performance of banks and thrifts to determine how well each meets the credit needs of its entire community, including low to moderate income neighborhoods. Independent mortgage banks, credit unions, and non-banks, which are brokers, are not subject to CRA laws, Community Reinvestment Act laws. So, in short, what happened was in 77, we passed laws that went to the Wells Fargo's, Bank of America's, Chase's, Cities and all of them and said, you guys, we have to see that your results are actually helping underserved communities, minority communities, and low to moderate income communities. And we're not even going to tell you exactly how you have to do this. We're just saying you have to have the results. We need to see that, in fact, this is happening. And if you don't, that's right, punitive actions will be taken against you. And really, if you look at the past 10 years of Wells Fargo, I mean, it's kind of funny how often those guys get busted. Wells Fargo is like that kid that you knew in grade school who was always doing stupid shit and always got in trouble and just could never possibly learn from his mistakes. We all knew that person. That's like Wells Fargo. By far the best when it comes to finding headlines of banks doing the wrong thing. But nevertheless, they're all kind of in the same boat together on this one. So, our depositories, the big banks, actually have a regulatory burden that they need to uphold, that they are accountable to, and face punitive actions in the event that they don't do a great job. Now, you out there, the independent mortgage banker, the mortgage broker, the credit unions, you are not being scrutinized by CRA regulations. Not at all. Okay, so the federal government is telling them, you better do this shit, and we are going to have the FDIC, the OCC, the Fed Board, and yes, now even the CFPB are looking at CRA laws to see how well these depository banks are doing when it comes to meeting what their legal mandate is now. So I thought it would be interesting to find out how you unregulated bankers and brokers, and what cracks me up is when you listen to, especially like even a lot of noise coming from the Mortgage Bankers Association, but like when you hear our policymakers and legislators, when they start talking about non-banks, independent mortgage bankers and mortgage brokers, it's always kind of like, well, these guys, they don't have as much skin in the game, and so their loans are going to perform worse. And I mean, this has been kind of like, for instance, before 2008, the term broker was interchangeable for anybody who did a shitty job on a loan. It was like, and the broker, I'm like, hold on, that's not a broker. The term broker, mortgage broker, was used for anybody in a disparaging manner, for anybody who did anything shitty that led to the meltdown in 2008. It was the term mortgage broker, and I know that because I started doing this show in 2007, dating myself right now. So I saw that whole thing, and so there's always been a bias against independent mortgage banks and brokers. And by the way, the difference between an independent mortgage bank and a broker, I mean, listen, I know that people are really strong, like, I'm this or I'm this. Fact of the matter is, the big difference is who's pushing the funding button. I mean, that's what it really boils down to. But anyways, I digress there. So there's always been a certain inherent bias that says that mortgage banks, the Cities, Wells, and Chases of the world are doing a better job. But I thought, well, now that we know that the Community Reinvestment Act is going after one and not the other, how well do you unregulated brokers and IMBs do against the big box banks and lenders out there? Well, when it comes to the percentage of loans that you do in communities of color, this is, by the way, this is their term, not mine, neighborhoods of color, for low to moderate income neighborhoods of color, the independent mortgage banker and broker, 26.4% of your business goes in low to moderate income neighborhoods, go to communities of color, whereas depository banks that chases the regulated banks out there, 22.2% of theirs go to neighborhoods of color. In short, being unregulated seems to say, when it comes to low to moderate income communities, that independent mortgage banks and brokers do a better job. You're unregulated and you're actually writing more loans for underserved communities than the regulated banks. Isn't that an interesting stat? They have Uncle Sam, holding up the rolled up newspaper ready to whack them in the head if they screw this thing up. And they did 22.2%, and unregulated mortgage brokers and banks did 26.4% when it comes to low to moderate income communities. Kind of a trip, isn't it? I thought, I didn't see that one coming. Now, what happens, and you can see the trend already here, what happens when we start to go up the socioeconomic rungs here? Okay, well, when it comes to middle-income neighborhoods, the unregulated mortgage brokers, independent mortgage bankers, and credit unions, 6.5% of your loans went to neighborhoods of color and underserved communities. And when it came to the regulated big box banks, 3.7%. So you beat them on the low to moderate income, you beat them on the middle income rungs. Kind of a trip, isn't it? Now, let's go to upper middle class. Once again, okay, so when it comes to upper middle class or upper income neighborhoods, 3.5% from the unregulated credit unions, mortgage brokers, and independent mortgage bankers, and the regulated big box banks, 1.9%. So you guys beat them there. And when we blend them all together, interestingly enough, once again, the unregulated independent mortgage bankers, brokers, and credit unions beat the living hell out of the regulated depository banks when it comes to serving underserved communities. Are you guys shocked by that? I'm a little shocked by that. Actually, I'm really kind of shocked. I'm very shocked by that. What about you guys? So why do I bring it up? What's up, Dave? They'll not let you share. Oh, they won't let. Are you serious, Dave? They won't let you share? That's a trip. Dave says he's trying to share the show right now, and they won't let him share. Interesting. Try it again. Wow, that's a trip. That's Facebook for you. They're going to find a way to get money out of you no matter what. So why do I bring this up? Okay, now it's kind of like pound your chest. Hey, look, we're doing a great job. Hey, listen, perhaps all this government oversight is not necessary. Perhaps, just perhaps, that mortgage lenders, mortgage brokers, mortgage bankers, credit unions, perhaps they are motivated by the same thing that motivates everybody else in the entire world, and that is self-interest. And what is a self-interest? Well, it goes something like this. The more loans you write, the more money you make. The more money you make, for the most part, the more successful you are at your job and the more you're going to enjoy the outcome of your job. The truth of the matter is, I could do this for $20,000 a year, or I could do this for $2 million a year. I can tell you right now, unequivocally, I would enjoy it more at $2 million a year. Okay? I mean, that's just kind of the nature of things. I think I'm kind of speaking for everybody when it comes to this. So we are motivated by the same thing that motivates everybody else. And the other component to this is now that we have LO Comp that came with GFE 2010 years and years and years ago, it's really kind of hard to cook the books, even if you wanted to give a certain a minority group or ethnicity a higher interest rate. It's harder to cook the books when your comp is set and your comp is what it is. You are simply outperforming what the big box banks are doing. And the reason is very simple when it comes to my thinking here is because mortgage brokers and independent mortgage bankers are way better at hustling and going out there and finding the business than somebody who's working in a cubicle over at Bank of America. They're not going to be the ones working with a real estate agent, going into different communities, knocking on doors, whatever the case it is, all the creative marketing that we do on this side of the industry, because our success is almost entirely dependent upon what we do in terms of our personal marketing. And because of that, we don't have the luxury, so to speak, of going out there and cherry picking where we're going to get our loans from. You know where I'm going to get my loans? Wherever I can get them. And why this is such a shock to people, shock to our regulators and policymakers, is a trip to me. It's an absolute trip. Lenders want to go out there and write loans because the more loans they write, the more successful they are. And after all, when you guys go to work, I know you guys love your jobs, but at the end of the day, it's still your job. And so if I'm going to go to work, I want to leave my day being as successful as humanly possible. And that means writing as many loans for anybody as humanly possible as I possibly can do. And it's just that simple. Again, the reason I bring this up is there's a lot of talk that's going on right now. It's been going on for the past couple of years, but it's really kind of hit the curve here because of the administration that we have right now, which is a big believer, a big proponent in heavy regulation, and a huge proponent of going out and pandering to minority groups. That's kind of what I see taking place right now. It just is. And here's my point. They're going to come out and say that independent mortgage bankers, brokers, wholesalers, and credit unions need to fall under the auspices of the Community Reinvestment Act, the 1977 CRA Act. They're going to come out and say, you guys need to do that too, because we over here at this administration care so much about underserved communities that we are going to regulate you just like we regulate the big depository banks out there, because we are the proponents of underserved communities. Well, spoiler alert, those who are not being regulated by you are actually doing a better job helping underserved and minority communities than those that are actually being regulated right now. And we have the statistics to prove it. And oh, by the way, this is interesting. The statistics I just gave you are from the Urban Institution. The Urban Institute right now, guys, would love nothing more than to tell you that independent mortgage bankers are failing. This is who they are. This is in their DNA, that they are failing and mortgage brokers are failing, and they need to be regulated by the government because that's a much more comfortable position for the Urban Institute to be. But their own data supports a lack of regulation as a means of helping underserved communities more so than the depository banks who have this massive and overwhelming regulation. I find it totally trippy, but maybe that's just me. And here's what the whole graph looks like. And you can see down there at the bottom right, it's the Urban Institute. And look at the numbers. The share of loans made to predominantly neighborhoods of color. Banks get their butts kicked all over the place. All you non-bankers out there, take a bow. Take a bow. You guys did a great job. You beat them across the board. And for that, you have just great bragging rights right now. And by the way, for all the right reasons. That's a pretty cool thing. Here's another thing that I found that I thought was kind of interesting, guys, is there's a group called Picasso. Have you guys ever heard of Picasso? Now I do kind of think that this is a violation. I don't know how this could not be a Fair Housing Act violation or a Fair Housing Act violation here. What Picasso is, Picasso buys luxury homes in resort communities and in second home destinations. Picasso is spelled P-A-C-A-S-O. It's an LLC. and they sell shares to their company, amounting to shares or ownerships in their properties. Okay? Sounds like a timeshare to me, doesn't it? People can buy, but you're actually, yeah, I don't know if they have fees and all that. People can buy as little as an eighth of a share into some of these properties or a half. But here's the whole thing that I found interesting about this I want to talk to you about real quickly, and we don't need to delve on this. But what Picasso is doing is they're saying, okay, if you want access to our properties that we have for sale, we could go ahead and make you, we could put you on a VIP list. I swear to God, for the life of me, Joanna, can you not imagine a company doing this? So what Picasso is saying is they'll put you on a VIP list, and what they'll do is they will give you access to properties for sale 24 hours before they hit the open market. Could you not picture, like, and I'm not saying they're doing this, could you not picture like Keller Williams or, Remax or one of these companies saying, okay, if you'd like to get access to our Remax listings, we can make you a VIP Remax repeat user, whatever the case may be. You can set your parameters and say, we'll give you access to our listings if you're a VIP. But here's the deal. In order to be a VIP, at least with Picasso, well, it's like everything else. If you want exclusivity, you know what it's going to do? It's going to cost you. Picasso access is going to cost a user a $1,000 one-time fee that will also include closing costs, credits tiered according to percentage of ownership. Buyers will receive $2,500 for an eighth share, $5,000 for a quarter share, and $10,000 for a half share. But the whole notion, especially right now with properties being so difficult to get your offers accepted, wouldn't it be interesting, and you wonder if you could do this legally, if a real estate company could actually say, all right, hold on a second here. We're going to run this more as a club, than we are a real estate office, and we're going to allow specific access to our properties. And if that was disclosed when you were on a listing presentation, could you then not get away with it? Now, we know that the National Association of Realtors would lose their mind about this, and they would probably send you a very nasty letter. They'll still take your money and let you be a member, but they'd probably send you a nasty letter. But you don't need to be a member of the National Association of Realtors in order to sell real estate. And frankly, when I look at the misallocation of their nearly $1 billion in funds that the National Association of Realtors receives right now, and how they're not using that to actually benefit real estate agents, frankly, if I was selling real estate right now, I don't think I'd be a member of NAR. And we know now that they can't keep us out of our multiple listing systems if you're not a member of NAR. So that wouldn't really dissuade me, but why not create an exclusive club? Especially like if you're one of these boutique real estate companies, it's kind of, you're the repeat client. You spend your $2,000 a month, you get 24-hour advance access to any listings that they might have. You get your personal showings to these listings. Maybe they pick you up in a damn limo and give you some champagne so you can go look at properties, but it's going to cost you. And what I do know about people is they will absolutely pay for exclusivity, won't they? I mean, people really will. When I read this, I thought, okay, this is a Fair Housing Act violation, because what it's doing is it's allowing access to sneetches with stars on their belly, to quote Dr. Seuss here, rather than the sneetches who don't have stars on theirs. Remember that one. And when you have exclusivity, certainly they're going to say that people of means who are higher up on the socioeconomic rungs are going to be able to pay for that exclusivity, and because of that, it might be a Fair Housing Act violation. I just got to think there's some type of workaround, because people love exclusivity. If you think I'm wrong, then ask yourself, why would any real estate agent actually pay for a designation? It's exclusivity. It's exclusivity, excuse me. That's kind of a tongue twister there. That's what it really boils down to. You're a buyer specialist, you're a seller specialist, you're an investor specialist. Why? Because you paid for a designation on your card? I mean, that's kind of the idea. And I don't mean to pick on real estate agents, because this is all over the place. I mean, if you're in any type of coaching program and you're paying $1,500 a month, but if you want to be a part of the super duper club, it's going to be $2,500 a month. Okay? I mean, every single real estate and mortgage lending coach in the country has a tiered scale of what you can pay, and the more you pay, the more exclusive you become. And it's remarkable to me how many people pay. And boy, do they ever. Here's a good rule of thumb. When you have a coach, if they're driving a $400,000 car, I just want you to know they bought that car with your exclusivity. If your mortgage coach or your real estate coach flies a private jet to Ireland, they bought that with your exclusivity. Just keep that in mind. All right, Diane, you were able to share. That's cool. So how are we doing here, guys? We doing good today? All right. Let's see. Oh, okay. So a couple other things here, which is really interesting. And again, this is something of a juxtaposition. Is right now we are seeing rates trending back up, and we talked about this a couple of days ago. And if you're not getting Barry's Mortgage MBS Highway, it actually is a really great service to have if you want to follow and track what rates are doing on a day in and day out basis. Full disclosure, I'm not getting paid to say that. It's just a good service if you want to follow rates. And so you can kind of see what's going on. And we see that rates are trending back up. We knew that once we had the little invasion over there, the little invasion, I'm not making light of it. I swear to God, I'm not making light of it. When the Ukraine was invaded, the volatility had people running towards, U.S. bonds, the security U.S. bonds. We saw rates dip down, and rates are jumping back up. But it's interesting because I always kind of I don't really make a connection between a change in rates of 1/8% and that actually getting people off the fence. But I did find this interesting. We saw rates drop for, about a week and a half, and they didn't go down terribly far. I mean, what we see, maybe a quarter for a couple of days. But during that week of that quarter, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association, mortgage applications rose by 8.5%. So I thought now rates are going back up. Volatility in mortgage rates, they're rising again. The Freddie Mac 30-year fixed rate average, I believe, is at 3.855%. Let me see, I'll tell you right now what it is. So the Freddie Mac 30-year, which is an average of your top, I think, 50 lenders out there. Yeah, so your Freddie Mac 30-year fixed rate average is at 3.85% at 0.8 of a point. And that, of course, is back on the rise again. But I found it interesting that rates did dip down. When we saw that quarter, we saw mortgage applications increase by 8.5%. Frankly, this is the important takeaway from this, guys, and I mean this too. I don't think that rates going down is what got applications to go up. I really don't. I think what got applications to go up is the fact that rates moved and it became a story in the news that became a top-of-mind item for a lot of folks out there. Hey, the invasion of Ukraine has affected mortgage rates and they've gone down. I think it's that talking point. It's not how much they went down. It's the fact that it became a top-of-mind point for people, and they said, oh, rates are down. It's a great time to go have a mortgage application, and we saw that to the tune of 8.5%. I don't think that your average Jane and Joe consumer out there were saying, well, how much did they go down? Is it 1/8? Because I'm not moving for 1/8. I'm sitting right here on my lazy boy for 1/8. Now, I need to get a quarter. I I can't have that 3.875 at 0.8% cost. No. I need 3.625 at 0.7% cost, and that's what's going to get me off the fence. I don't think anybody's doing that shit. I think what happens is they hear it, it becomes top of mind, and that gets them out of their lazy boy and filling out a 1003. Now, the reason that's important is because if it's not the rate, but it's the fact that people are then thinking about it, and when they think, it's kind of like, you ever go look at cars? I did this shit I went and bought a car for my daughter. Next thing you know, I'm buying a car for myself, right? So when it becomes top of mind, it becomes topical. People think about it, and then people take actions on what they're thinking about. Why this is important is, as a real estate agent or a mortgage lender, it becomes very, very important that we continually and persistently start to message the things that are fantastic about buying real estate and getting mortgages right now. Again, we spoke about this. Rate and term refinance is dead in the water. Cash out refinances is where the real savings lie. Cash out refinances, debt consolidation refinances is where there's actual meaningful benefit for homeowners out there. And right now, one of the things that we're going to talk about is how to go ahead and manufacture more listings. There's a lot of folks out there who are thinking about listing their house who haven't listed their house because all they're hearing, again, the same type of talking points, is real estate is going through the roof. What they need to be hearing is that real estate might be hitting the top of that bell curve right now. because though we see market appreciation in virtually every major, well, actually every single major metropolitan market in the entire country, the amount of appreciation at this point versus last year and even the year before is starting to taper off. I'm not saying it's going to go downhill, but if people are waiting to try to time listing their house to hit the top of the market, you can make a pretty damn good argument that we're getting very close to that right now. And it's that talking point in and of itself that I think is important. And we will talk more about that in effective messaging tomorrow. The other thing that we're doing, by the way, is we are also, and I'll put it in the comments down below, but we are doing database marketing on Thursdays at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. It's all free of charge. Database marketing at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, where we're kind of starting to lift the hood and look at how to access databases that are not your own. We've been doing it now for 4 or 5 weeks. We missed one 2 weeks ago. We had a little snafu with our internet over here. But we did one today. So if you guys want to jump in on our database marketing, I'll have that in the comments down below here in just a few moments. So jump back in. With that said, independent mortgage brokers, right on, Rodil. Okay, with that said, guys, we will chat you up tomorrow. Stay safe. Have a nice dinner. Happy selling.